In today's video, we're reviewing a lot of NHL news and rumors, including an Athletic article that suggests the Maple Leafs have 4 options to take with Captain John Tavares this offseason. One includes talking to him about waiving his no-trade and getting dealt out of his hometown city. We'll discuss that possibility, if it's realistic or not. In Montreal, we're taking a look at some rumors involving potentially trading Josh Anderson if they're able to. Plus, are they going to get into big game hunting in the free agent market? Could they target some of the top players that are expected to hit the market? Plus, we have some other news as well, including more changes with the Ottawa Senators and their front office. We also have updates around the NHL, including the waiver wire, some signings, roster moves, and a scary situation today in the Pittsburgh and Tampa game involving seeing a referee stretchered off the ice. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to cover today. Before we jump into the news, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge that today is the 6-year anniversary of the tragic accident that we saw in Saskatchewan involving the Humboldt Broncos, the bus accident. Unfortunately, we've seen the entire team on their way to a playoff game involved in that tragic accident, which many of their teammates lost their lives. Some were seriously injured. There was a lot of impact there on that day. Obviously, just want to give our thoughts to everybody that was involved. I just want to take a minute and acknowledge that. Certainly, every year when it comes around again, it's just hard to imagine something like that happened. I hope we never see anything like that happen again. And I just want to give our thoughts to everybody that was involved and hope that all the survivors and families and everybody that's carrying on here are doing okay, certainly in my thoughts here today. Now let's dive into today's news affecting around the NHL. First up, we actually have waiver activity, which is something we haven't had in a little while. But the Columbus Blue Jackets have placed Carson Meyer on waivers. He was recently, I guess it's been a little while now since he was called up. He got to play 12 games. They wanted to put him back to the American Hockey League. Since it's been either more than 30 days or 10 games, they do need to go through the waiver process in order to do so. I suspect he'll clear. Obviously, with the trade deadline and the roster rules around playoffs, if anybody did decide to put in a claim, it'd have to be a non-playoff team, and I just don't see that happening right now this time of year. So I suspect he'll clear and will be reassigned tomorrow. We did get a few other roster moves today. The Minnesota Wild today called up goaltender Jesper Wallstedt, so he's projected to be the goalie of the future. Of course, we don't know, if Marc-Andre Fleury is going to return next year. Wallstedt could be on the NHL roster full-time next year. If Fleury's not there, I don't know how they're going to handle that. Gustafsson obviously had a really solid year last year. Has definitely taken a step back in his play this year. So I'm not sure what the future holds or when exactly we're going to see Wallstedt on a regular basis. But he was called up. He will be joining the team for their game in Chicago tomorrow, and he is expected to get the start as well, which is good. And I believe his parents are here, which is nice to see as well, that they're actually going to get a chance to watch him. He did make one other start earlier in the season, which didn't go very well, but I believe one of his parents were able to go and the other one wasn't. So this might be a good family opportunity and good for testing ground here for him to kind of see how he's done since he last popped up in the NHL. The Seattle Kraken today also returned defenseman Cale Fleury to the American Hockey League. We've seen the Ottawa Senators today confirm that top centerman Timmy Stützle is not going to play tonight, which is really unfortunate considering that it's fan appreciation night and it's Tim Stützle bobblehead giveaway night as well. So unfortunately, he's not going to be able to be in the lineup. In their last game against Florida, he did take a hit that you could see he played through it, but he was kind of wincing. Looked like he had some upper body pain up in like the clavicle, shoulder area, whatnot. So doesn't sound like it's anything too serious, but they're sitting him out, basically, letting him heal up from that. There's no need to try to play through an injury when you're not going to the playoffs. You're not trying to get every point you can. You're not in the race anymore. So doesn't make sense. Just unfortunate given the circumstances of what tonight is at the rink for the home fans. And they've recalled Boko Imama, which is be his first game with the Sens. He's been in the minors all season. He came over as a pro signing after coming over from, I believe, he was with the Coyotes organization. But Boko Imama is not a name that everybody knows, but somebody I'm quite familiar with because he played his junior hockey not far far from here with the St. John Sea Dogs, so certainly got to see him play a bit. He was teammates with Matthew Joseph and Thomas Chabot, so he knows those guys well. So they will have a trio of former Sea Dogs in their lineup tonight. He's certainly an energy guy, a guy who's not afraid to drop the gloves and fight. Terrific speed. So we'll see what he can do on that fourth line tonight. They're definitely going to have a little bit of a different looking lineup with him in and Stützle out. So we'll see how things go for Boko Imama's Sens debut in Ottawa. In Montreal, we got word as well they've recalled defenseman Justin Barron because Caden Gooley and Arbor Jacki are both out. They're considered day-to-day. Hard to say how long they'll be out, probably at least a game or two, but they will not be in the lineup tonight against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Justin Barron gets the call up. As I mentioned as well, we saw a game earlier today, the early matinee between the Penguins and the Lightning, which was a heck of a hockey game. I didn't get to see the entire game, but I did see big chunks of and stretches here. At one point, it was looking really solid for the Pens. They had a 4-1 lead. Looked like they were in the driver's seat. It's like, okay, I had to step away from the game for a little while, and then I came back to it, and it was just like that. It was bam, it was 4-4. Tampa tied it up. 3 consecutive goals. Then Michael Bunting got the go-ahead goal again to solidify the 5-4 win for Pittsburgh. But a scary moment happened as well in that game. Referee Steve Kozzari ended up being stretchered off the ice. He had a thunderous, you could call it thunderous or like violence, what some people call it, collision with defenseman of the Lightning, Hayden Fleury. It's just complete fluke. It was right around pretty much middle of the ice, right at center. Kozzari was kind of going back, and Fleury was coming forward. They just didn't see each other, and they rammed into each other pretty hard. Fleury got off the ice on its own, but went straight down the tunnel. Kozzari did need to be stretchered off, like I said, and the word was when he left the ice, he had his arm up, so everybody knew he was, he was conscious, and they said that he had been blacked out. Like, he was out for a while, though. He was knocked out and came back to, had use of all of his limbs, extremities. So good sign there. The NHL has since put out a statement saying that he was brought to hospital and for observation and whatnot, and that he's expected to make a full recovery. Hard to say the exact diagnosis, or I'm not sure if he's got a concussion or whatnot, but either way, it was a scary scene on the ice in Pittsburgh, and you don't really see something like that happen very often, but it can happen, and it did happen here today. Huge win for the Penguins. They get 2 points. Went much needed. Doesn't really affect the Lightning as much in the standings. The Penguins jump over a few teams to get back into a wild card spot, and if I'm not mistaken, I know looking at NHL.com, they're in the wild card spot, and they still have the Islanders in that 3 spot, only because the Islanders have played one less game, but the Penguins do have more wins and regulation wins than them. So they would, if they are tied at all, if the Penguins and Islanders, they would win a tiebreaker. So the Penguins right now have created a pretty decent path to get into that number 3 spot. They've overcome Philly. I mean, you saw the Capitals have lost a few lately. They've been falling back. The Islanders have been kind of up and down. It's difficult to say how this is going to go. I mean, you can't rule out Detroit sneaking in there either. They've kind of been up and down too. But at this rate, I kind of wonder if we could see the Penguins sneak into that 3rd spot, because they're right there. Obviously, the Islanders' next game is going to be huge to see if they can kind of keep pace, or if the Islanders will fall back at all. But imagine if we saw a Pittsburgh-Carolina matchup in round 1, you could see the Penguins against their old buddy Jake Guentzel. When the Penguins traded Guentzel, they certainly thought the season was lost, which is why they made that move. And, well, here we are. It could be very interesting. No guarantee that happens, of course, but just to me, a very intriguing storyline that's kind of in the midst of lining up, but it's not quite there yet, so we'll have to see where things go. More news in Ottawa. They made some more changes. Of course, we saw, since new ownership took over in September, we saw Pierre Dorion be let go, who's the general manager. Of course, there was other reasons behind that. I really think he would have been gone probably by now anyway, but Pierre Dorion's gone. The head coach and DJ Smith was let go. We also had an assistant coach and Davis Payne let go. They changed the goalie coach. Zach Burke I don't think he was fired. I believe he was reassigned, and they brought up Justin Peters, who was the AHL goalie coach. And then today they announced that they're parting ways with their two pro scouts, which is Jim Clark and Rob Murphy. Jim Clark was the longtime head pro scout. They only made a change at the beginning of this year. They switched it to his role where Murphy became the head of the department, which is really small. That's part of the other issue in Ottawa is that they've had pretty much a bare bones front office. They really haven't had a very big team. And because of the cheapness of the previous owner in Eugene Melnyk, let's just call it what it is. They had difficulty attracting quality people. From the salaries that were offered to the fact that Melnyk was just utterly difficult to work with. It's just that simple. Their pro scouting department in Ottawa has been atrocious for a long time. So to me, I never want to celebrate anybody losing their job. I said the same thing about when DJ Smith was let go and other, head coaches and whatnot. These are good people at the end of the day, and you don't want to celebrate anybody losing their job. You never know when that could be somebody could be yourself. But at the end of the day, this change is necessary in Ottawa. Take a look at their recent history in the last few years. I mean, look at that Korpisalo signing from last offseason. That's not looking too hot right now. Look at the other defensemen that they've brought in the last 2, 3, 4 years, especially because as they were rebuilding the fillers, they brought in Travis Hamonic, Josh Brown, Michael Del Zotto, Eric Gabranson, Braden Coburn there for a half a year. Those were brutal decisions. Even getting Dominic Kubalik back for DeBrincat. I'm not sure who recommended that, but that's not worked out. Dylan Gambrell, Matt Murray, there's another one, the goaltending selections. There's been a lot of pro people that come in between other NHL teams that have just been absolutely ferocious between some of the trades and free agency. I mean, they've made some good moves too, don't get me wrong. They're not all horrible. But some of the ones that were kind of no-brainers, you can't really say Claude Giroux had an involvement on the pro scouting team. I mean, he's Claude Giroux. Nobody really needed advice on whether or not you should sign him. So, they don't get credit for that one, in my opinion. But a lot of the other guys that we've seen come in, thankfully they've drafted well, because the main players they have that are good players and a big part of their future are all players that they've drafted and developed for the most part. Outside of Giroux, there's not a lot on that roster that's been brought in through other means. So this is a necessary change, and I'm glad to see them make that change. It makes sense to do it now as well, so they can bring in, a couple other people to take part in those roles, so they can get ready for the offseason when they, need pro scouts to be involved in some of the decisions made for any free agent signings they might consider or trades they might consider or things like that. So you want to get ahead of that, and I hope they don't wait too long to name their head coach, who's taking over from Jacques Martin. I think they need to get that, done, and I kind of wish they would have done it sooner, to be honest. But at this rate, the changes just continue, and they're going to be a little while before they've kind of had a chance to really evaluate everything in the organization. Now, as I mentioned in the rumor mill today, we're going to take a look at some Maple Leafs and Habs stuff. There's an Athletic article regarding the Maple Leafs I want to look at, written by Eric Duhatschek, who's kind of analyzing what the Leafs should do with Captain John Tavares. Now, of course, the answer here might be nothing, because there's 4 options that he presents in this article. And essentially the reason for this is that Tavares, yes, he's been a good player for them the entire time he's been there. I don't want to doubt that. I said it from the time that he first landed there. It's not that he's a bad player. He's not. But to me, it was just a luxury they didn't need. To me, I thought they should have taken that money and invested in other parts of the team. And I think if they had have done that, they may have been able to be stronger overall. It might have maybe seen more playoff success by now. But hey, I'm not an NHL GM. Maybe that wouldn't worked out either. But those were my thoughts. And to me, paying $11 million to a player like Tavares also set them up to have to overpay, or not really overpay, but have no chance, you could say, to get a discount on their homegrown talent like Nylander, like Matthews, and like Marner. None of those guys want to take a discount, and they haven't. And they're paying through the nose for it. They're good players, sure, but they do have a cap problem. I mean, they're not the only ones. A lot of teams have a cap problem, but we are seeing an increase this year. But until Tavares' contract is expired, which is still a year away, it's going to be difficult to have much more flexibility. Every year we have significant turnover in the supporting cast, because if they have people that are brought in for that, they do well, they can't afford to keep them, they have to leave. Or they don't do well and they're not happy with them, they leave anyway, right? So there's been massive turnover year to year. So clearly, in the case of 1 year left with John Tavares, the article says essentially, They don't do anything about next year, and they talk to Tavares about doing a very team-friendly extension for the future, because he is eligible July 1 to extend his contract. Now, if I'm Toronto at this point, I'm probably not thrilled with the fact that he's making $11 million anymore. But at the same time, like I said, I don't think he's horrible and you have to get rid of him either. There is options if you do, but at the same time, if he wants to stay, and, I'd be content having him at a much lower number. But how low will he go on an extension? If he's truly, hometown John Tavares, I want to help this hometown team win, you would think he would take a cheap contract, because, you have to acknowledge, and if I'm the Leafs, I'm going to be selling the fact that, hey, we paid you handsomely on this free agent contract, and we're not saying you didn't deliver, but you haven't really been an $11 million player in a while. So how about you take all those millions you've made and put it in the bank, and you do us a favor and take something really cheap here and sign like ultra cheap, or we can't bring you back. So do they do a really cheap extension and hope that he'll go for that? That's option one. Option two, you talk about trading him and you ask him, because you're going to have to need his permission because he's got a full no move. You talk to him about the fact that the team needs to make changes. His contract's kind of handcuffing him. There's only 1 year left. Would you waive and we'll find a new home for you, and then you can be a free agent in a year? Do you do that? Will he even consider that? That's the next question. Option three is, do you look at buying him out? I can tell you the answer to that right now is no, because the way his contract is structured is pretty much buyout proof. They'd only save like $300,000 on the cap hit next year. That is not worth it. Not worth it at all. Option four is you don't do anything. You don't talk to him about a trade, and you don't talk to him about an extension. You just let it ride. And when the contract's up, you say, thank you for your service. We need to move on and try to find some, maybe more younger talent. Put that money to other use with younger players that can kind of take the next wave of the team. So how do you handle this? And to me, like I said, out of the four options, option three, but the buyout, you don't even go there at all. It makes no sense. You're not going to save any money. You don't do it. To me, I don't think you do number four either. Do nothing. I think you need to talk to him. But because you do want to get a sense for, would he stay, and if so, what would he accept? And to me, so if you leave that option four off the table and you say we're not going to do nothing, we're going to talk to him and we're going to have those conversations about the future. Well, that's off the mix. So then you either get a feel for what an extension could look like and you try to work something out. Or if things are not going well in terms of that, then you say, okay, we don't really want to move you, but we really need the flexibility. Is there any way you'd consider giving us a list of teams that you would go to? You don't want to ruin a relationship. You don't want to entirely piss them off, so to speak. At the same time, you got to do what's best for your organization. So I think you try to work out that extension, and you only go down the trade route if it's gone like horribly bad. At the end of the day, though, if this team has another early exit from the playoffs, they need to make significant change, and it's tough to do that when you've got his contract on the books for another year, and then you've got to try to extend Marner too, and he's going to want something around the Matthews money, or maybe slightly less, but not much. That's going to hurt. It's going to handcuff you again to really adding a lot of other options. And then you got guys like Domi and Bertuzzi. Yes, they both started really slow. They signed 1-year deals. Wasn't looking good in the first 20, 30 games of the year, but they've played a lot better down the stretch. A lot better. And honestly, I don't think you can afford to keep both of them because you have too much other money tied up elsewhere. So in your blue line, we'll see how the blue line does in the playoffs. That'll determine if they need upgrades there. But they don't really have a traditional or anything you can really call a shutdown pair either. So you might need a different mix there. Goaltending is going to need some contracts. Samsonov's going to be a free agent again. There's lots to think about in Toronto, and that $11 million could go a long way to answering a lot of those questions. So I can understand why the concept of trading him is attractive for what he brings. I just don't see the Leafs going there. I really, really don't. But let me know, do you think the Leafs need to explore that? Will they actually do it? Or the most likely outcome here is that they talk to him about a cheap contract extension and they just hope for the best. And if those negotiations don't necessarily go very well for a cheap extension, that they just kind of let it ride, don't let it be a distraction, and kind of hope that maybe things will be reconsidered before he actually hits free agency the following summer. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that. In Montreal, of course, we talked a bit about some different trades in the last number of days or a couple of weeks here. Josh Anderson, though, it definitely seems to be a name that the Montreal Canadiens are very much not only open to, but hoping to be able to find a fresh start for the summer. So if they do pull off any trades, do expect his name to come up a lot. I really think Anderson needs a fresh start. He clearly has not had a good season in Montreal, which is going to make it that much more challenging to move him, mind you. But I think an effort has to be made. I mean, they've got some veterans on that team that the Mia contract, for example, wasn't looking great, but he's played a lot better. Maybe they'll find a way to move off of that contract now. He might have been able to find enough value there by the improved play. But then you've got Anderson, you've got Gallagher. Those contracts are not aging very well. And, you can only have so much of that around. They are expected, according to Montreal media, to try to be a player in the UFA market. They mentioned Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos as being potential targets. Sam Reinhart and Jake Gensel's names also brought up. I do think out of the four, though, I think Reinhart is very, very likely to stay in Florida. I think you'll see him take less money to stay there with the no state tax. I would not be shocked if Gensel stays in Carolina. Even if he doesn't, I don't know that Montreal is going to be a landing spot for him. Marchessault and Stamkos would be more likely out of the four. Marchessault probably being the most likely because it would be obviously a chance for him to play in his home province. But again, he's been in Vegas for an extended time. He's having another solid year. We know Vegas has not had a difficult time making tough decisions and moving on from key people. So, will he be back? I don't know. If he does truly end up hitting the market like it's leaning towards right now, will he go to Montreal and go to a team rebuilding compared to being a championship caliber? Same with Stamkos. These guys are, in no state tax situations in Nevada and Florida, respectively. They're in completely different climates. Yes, they're both Canadian, but still, I don't know. I mean, to me, I think it's going to be tough for Montreal. I can see the interest being there. If you want to have if they're able to move a guy like Anderson or Mia, and then maybe you can bring in another free agent veteran like one of them to really be a good leader, could be a good help for Suzuki in the leadership side, and not only leader that way, but leader production-wise on the ice. It would be wise to have one more veteran guy come in like that to kind of offset all the young guys that you're trying to work with. I just don't know what the odds of them landing one of these people are. I think they're going to have a lot of options, and they're used to winning, and they're coming, I just don't know if either of them really have the appetite for a rebuild right now, but let me know your thoughts on that. Is a Josh Anderson trade likely? How difficult? Is it too difficult? And could they pull that off while managing to bring in a guy like Marchessault or Stamkos? I think it's challenging. I don't see it happening myself, but I do understand why the interest is there and why they would try. But let me know what you think the odds are of it actually happening. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.